and I was kind of hoping I could get some potential help with it. There's like Aaron here. Okay, I don't know, Chester. I think you also have the ability to admit people into the room, right? Maybe I'll let you handle that if you're there.
Yeah, no
Okay.
problem. Yep.
All right. Cool. All right. 'Cause there's something I really wanted to discuss today, or at least my little story of how I did a game jam this last weekend. So hang on. I guess before I launch into that, let me just read this comment from the chat real quick. In terms of usage of Rust, MS rewrites some old kernel modules in Rust. Simovic and Mariani are very enthusiastic with the language. I wish I could move to the team writing in Rust. Yeah, I've definitely seen more and more adoption of Rust. I mean, obviously, a lot of the big like FANG companies have already adopted Rust in some capacities in certain projects. Not usually like really big projects. Usually, a lot of older systems are not being rewritten in Rust, but some systems are being rewritten in Rust piecemeal, and newer projects, I would say, are usually uh, written in more modern languages. Uh, Golang seems to be quite popular as well. But some people are also picking Rust because they like their type safety or for whatever other reasons. But anyway, yeah, so I'm gonna dive into my little story here. So this past weekend, I actually participated in a game jam in our company. So we have a annual game jam at Improving, and yeah, this year we decided to, at least my team decided to try Rust. So I was actually working with another person, and you don't know, the goal of a game jam is to try and create a game based on some randomly picked theme. I need to create the game in less than 48 hours. So we just basically worked on a game all weekend and uh, try to see how far you can get. And there's like a voting panel, and then games are rated, and there's like prizes if you get first place and stuff. So yeah, um, basically we decided to use Rust, and I initially suggested Bevy because that's the engine that I'm familiar with. My teammate, for context, is completely new to Rust. He's never used Rust before. He's never tried it, um, and he was kind of curious. He just wanted to give it a try. He was like, "Why don't we do something a bit different instead of using Unity? There's a lot of controversy surrounding Unity these days. Why don't we, maybe try using Rust?" I was like, "Okay, sure." And so we started writing our project in Bevy, but as we were going through a tutorial, and this was a tutorial for a two-dimensional platforming game, that's the kind of game that he wanted to make. And someone in the comment section of that tutorial left a comment saying, "You can do this in much fewer lines of code and way simpler if you just use Firefox instead." And he linked to a tutorial for Firefox, and the tutorial was for a 2D platformer as well. And so we decided, okay, um, let's check out Firefox, I guess, and see what that's about. So we checked out Firefox, and immediately, my teammate was like, "Oh, this is like way cooler. Like, this has like a visual editor and everything. Like it just looked like Unity. I can even show it right here if I share my screen. Um, so if I just do this, yeah, hopefully you can see this. There's like an editor. It's like straight up a full-on Unity style editor. Oops, that's in the way. I just want to move that there. There's like a straight up Unity editor. Um, so you can like drag and drop stuff into the scene, and you can like tweak parameters in here. Um, but so we followed this tutorial to a T, but we kind of kind of ended up with problem. Oh yeah, so the reason why we got like Michael Jordan here is because the theme that was selected for the game jam was Space Jam. So yeah, this is why we have a little Michael Jordan here. But one of the problems that we had was, uh, yeah, the character he gets a little bit stuck. He gets kind of stuck in the ground. We weren't able to fix this. So yeah, you can try to walk and you can try to jump, but nothing works. Um, and I thought that was kind of interesting because on my partner's machine, it would sometimes work, and other times it wouldn't. And sometimes he would start up the game and it would be working, and then he would resize the window, and then it would stop working. He'd get stuck in the ground again. Um, so this is kind of a showstopper, as you can probably imagine, because if you can't move around at all, you can't really play the game, right? It doesn't really. It's not much of a game if you're just not doing anything. You're not going to be winning any competitions that way. So we kind of struggled with this for a while. We Googled for answers. Of course, there weren't really that many resources on Firefox because it's still relatively new, and game dev in Rust in general is pretty young compared to Unity. Um, and ultimately, with 48 hours, we'd already spent pretty much like an entire day trying to fix issues. Um, we decided, we have no choice. We're scrapping this. So yeah, basically, this is a story of failure. I wasn't able to actually get this thing working, and we ended up switching back to Unity. And then we made a cute little game in Unity, and we ended up getting second place with that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And the thing is, I just don't really know what went wrong, and I'm not really sure if anyone here knows why this isn't working or why the character kind of gets stuck in the ground like that. I mean, we followed the tutorial pretty much exactly. Um, so yeah, I was hoping that maybe somebody out there would know and would be able to like help, but um, not really. I don't really have high hopes. I actually largely suspect that this is just a bug in the engine, like in the actual physics engine, or in like the collision engine. So yeah, that's my kind of sad story of trying to use Rust for a game jam, and it didn't really work out. I don't know what anyone else thinks, or if anyone else has ever tried anything like this. I guess we'll stop sharing now. Nobody has any thoughts or ideas.
Well, the only thing I had to say is that I learned not to do that.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, that's not very helpful, so I'm not gonna say it. But I was thinking the same thing. I was like, maybe Firefox is not something I'll try on a game jam. You know, the finite amount of time.
Yeah, no, it was definitely not the right idea.
Maybe you can remove the shoes.
I mean, if if I could like go back in time and like do this again, and if I had to like insist on like getting it to work with Rust, I think I would have stuck with Bevy. I would have just said no. Let's not switch to Firefox and not get lured in too much by the cool Unity style editor and all the bells and whistles. I mean, the thing is, when when you're new to Rust and you don't know anything about the language, when a game engine just provides you an option like that, like a UI editor where you can just use Rust as just like a scripting language, you just you just feel a lot more comfortable. It just feels so much more approachable because you can tweak most of the parameters just in the editor. You can drag and drop prefabs into the scene. You don't really have to worry so much about like doing everything in code and understanding like the module structure and all that. Like that's definitely less of an issue. At least in terms of like approachability. Obviously, if you're more experienced, then you'd probably be able to get a lot further in Bevy, I imagine. Although I haven't tried making a 2D platformer in Bevy, so I don't know if it necessarily would work better. But I have built like a top-down shooter in Bevy, and that seemed fun. But yeah, that was kind of my concern, I guess, with this. It just is kind of misleading when you get this fancy editor and uh, you know it just feels like it'd be a lot simpler to use that, especially when people in the comment section are saying like, oh yeah, just you can do the same thing as this tutorial is doing, but faster and with less code if you just switch engines, and then they give you a link to this. Like I kind of felt I kind of felt cheesed. I got led down the garden path a bit there. So I wasn't super happy about that. Yeah, being forced to switch back to Unity obviously was pretty unpleasant. But we got second place in the end, so I guess it's not so bad. Anyway, that was my story.
The tutorial that you were following, did it work? Did you ever actually try the tutorial?
Then so what you saw is the tutorial. I mean, we've
That
replaced
is the tutorial. You just replaced the character.
we replaced a graphic. That was it. We replaced one texture. all the rest of that stuff is supplied as part of the tutorial, and it's really well set up too. Like they give you a template. You just run one command. It sets up a template for you. It lets you like easily download all the assets and import them and everything. I actually do have a link to that tutorial. Let me just go and get that here. So if and the computer's running a little bit slow, so I'll probably because I'm still running this editor. What's that? Yeah, so this is the tutorial that we were following, and the one that we were linked to. It's like in the official documentation for Firefox as well, which is even more, I guess, disappointing.
So before you changed the texture, was it working, or did you never try?
No. Even with the original texture, it was not working. We were still stuck in the ground. So I just don't know what is up with that. It wasn't working on my machine. It wasn't working on his machine. It was non-deterministic, which is even worse. Like sometimes you could walk, and other times you'd just be stuck in the ground, and you wouldn't be able to do anything. But yeah, that's the tutorial. great tutorial.
Actually, I had I guess it's not similar. The tutorial for Bevy, I tried on my cousin's laptop and it didn't work, but it worked fine on mine. So the
Really?
game runs. It's just that it doesn't show anything. But you know the game is running because the score shows and the score keeps on changing. But the game itself, you couldn't see the paddles or the I think it's like a ping pong where you have to knock the things and delete the things kind of thing. And well, I don't know. It wasn't working on hers, but it worked on mine. To be fair, her laptop's a bit older, so I'm not sure if it's some graphics card thing that wasn't supported or whatever.
Possibly. I've had similar issues happen with the old Amethyst engine, the one that kind of got, I guess, deprecated in favor of Bevy. So I used to try dabbling with game dev in Amethyst back in, I don't know, like 2018, 2019. And yeah, it was. There are issues where you had to like update your OpenGL version to get stuff to run. I had an older laptop at the time as well, and yeah, that fixed, I guess, the issues, but didn't exactly address them. So yeah, could be a similar issue there, but that's interesting. So I guess the moral of the story is that game dev in Rust is still work in progress, still not really quite there yet.
Well, I'm still at the beginning of the Bevy book, but hopefully I'll get to the end. And well, the book is actually pretty short. And instead of book, I kind of expected more pages. I think it has like 5 pages. But you know, it at least covers a tutorial and how to set up and explaining what you need to install and why. Um, like in terms of optimizations to be able to actually run the code in debug mode. Otherwise, it's too slow. So it explains that you need to compile your dependencies in release mode, even though you compile in debug mode. So that was kind of cool.
Right, yeah. I will say, like, I like that Bevy and also Firefox too generally compile pretty quickly. I mean, not the first time. When you first build your projects, it's usually still pretty slow, but subsequent builds usually are a lot faster, especially if you enable those optimizations. So yeah, I do appreciate that they put in real effort to make sure that builds are actually pretty fast. But yeah, I feel like for Bevy, once you understand like the ECS model, it's pretty easy to just kind of make whatever you want at that point. No guarantees that it'll actually run fast, mind you, but like for the top-down shooter that I built, one of the biggest issues was it was very slow, and I was getting pretty low frame rates. And the reason for that was actually because you know it was just the collision checking algorithm I was using was just inefficient, and that's just me not knowing anything about game dev, dabbling with game development and not realizing that you can use collision hashing to make sure that you only check certain collisions close to certain objects, and that's a lot faster than trying to check against every object in the entire world, even though a lot of them are too far away to ever possibly have a collision with the player character or the bullets or whatever. So I also learned a little bit about object pooling as well, because when you're making a top-down shooter, you've got a lot of bullets flying around on the screen, and creating and deleting objects can be kind of expensive, and so it's usually better to just instantiate a pool of objects and then load them in and deactivate them when they're supposed to be deleted, and that way you don't have to like actually delete them. But yeah, those are like the kinds of optimizations that you just kind of have to learn about yourself through experience and googling around, and that's not really stuff that they talk about in the Bevy tutorials at all. And it's very easy to end up just making a game that just runs very slowly if you don't know these kinds of tricks. So
Yeah, I admit that when I started, I was kind of hoping for a guided tour through game development. They said they had a book. I was like, oh, great. There's going to be a guided tour. And then I finished the first 2 pages and I'm like, oh, wait, there are only 3 more pages left. Oh, it's not quite what I was thinking.
yeah,
I mean, it's not bad.
yeah. I mean, if you know what you're doing, then like it's a great launching point. But if you don't know what you're doing, like I did, then then you're gonna run into issues pretty quickly, and you're gonna have to figure them out. And a lot of these issues are kind of taken care of for you in other engines. Like if you're building a game in Unity, they seem to take care they seem to take care of a lot of this stuff in their built-in physics engines and stuff. Like you don't really have to worry about that as much. At least I feel. I don't know. Maybe it's also possible in Bevy, because Bevy has the plugin system, right? So you can just kind of add whatever physics engine or whatever other features you want to the engine. But yeah. Anyway, is there anything that anyone else wanted to talk about or discuss today? Any questions?
So most of you guys are using Rust for game dev?
No, I only did game dev for 1 day so far, and I only covered like 2 pages. I've mostly been using Rust for web development, writing a backend web server in Rust. And then I do lead code in Rust because That's a lot more fun than I thought.
Yeah, I don't use. Well, I mean, I use I use Rust mostly for game dev, I guess, but I've also used it for web apps, some little CLI tools. It's kind of my go-to language for most applications. Outside of work, of course, because you don't really have much of a choice necessarily. I mean, Artavan here has actually used Rust at work, so maybe he can speak more to that. But
I think it's has its uses for sure.
Cool. Thanks for answering. Yeah, I'd love to be able to check it out. I used to code in Haskell a good deal, and I was kind of getting into Idris and Agda back in the day. But yeah, haven't ever checked out Rust. And so I do SRE work for my day to day, and you kind of use Golang, and Golang is kind of boring.
mhm.
Very conservative language.
Your faults for Golang don't sound like bad things. Boring is good. Boring works.
Yeah, that is true. When you're SRE, it's like you just want stuff that works, which might be unfortunate in some ways, but
I think everybody wants stuff that works. But I think for me, no, everybody doesn't want stuff that works. Well, that was
I
an
don't
assumption I was going in with.
I don't know if I entirely agree with that. I think that like app devs can oftentimes just have a lot more leeway to play with what they want. Whereas, if you're an SRE, for example, it's like anything you write can easily take down, the company.
Right.
Like at my company, they use Elixir on the back end.
I see.
So that's a lot more fun than Golang.
Fair enough.
I kind of find that interesting because I remember, um, I remember people in these meetups way back in like 2018, 2019. We were talking about Golang and how they always felt like it gets you like 80% of the way there, and then you crash and burn for the last 20% of the way. And I don't really have a lot of experience with Golang, so I can't really speak to that. But that's kind of how that's kind of how they felt, and that's why they preferred Rust. But yeah, that's interesting. I see there's a bunch of stuff happening in chat. Let's see.
Side meeting happening in the meeting.
The side meeting, yeah, where everyone talks about lead code. Lead code and Rust is fun.
Yeah. I had mentioned Liquid Rust's front, and he had responded, or she responded. I didn't catch the gender. And yeah, so I just invited the person to join us because right now there are only two of us active in the doing Liquid. Like, there's me and another guy from India. Basically, we post a problem, and the other person tries to do it as well, kind of thing, and we can compare solutions and that kind of thing. So generally, we do the daily challenges, but I have missed a couple of days because we've been writing a cargo subcommand to make it easier to do development on our local machines because I don't like working in the IDE that Liquid provides. So basically, we tried to do development on our local machine and just copy the solutions back to Liquid after. And that was kind of fun, It was my first cargo subcommand. I had used clap before, but I'd never used it as a subcommand. And when I was done, it didn't work, and I was like, what have I done wrong? And then I Googled cargo subcommand clap, and it just came up. They literally have instructions on how to do it in a tutorial, so I just copied and pasted from that, and that just worked. So that was kind of cool.
Nice.
once I get it a little bit more working, I will probably put a pitch in for me to present it at one of the meetups. But right now, it's kind of not. It works. It works. It's just not working well yet. There's more things to do than things done.
Neat. Yeah, actually, speaking of IDEs, one thing I know that I noticed and a lot of other people noticed during our game jam was when we were like running our games and testing them, and we were trying to like tweak the code. VS Code like literally lags. And when I was using Vim, it was actually quite smooth, and it was kind of surprising to see just like how much laggier VS Code actually is. I'm kind of surprised by that. Helix is a good alternative. I've never heard of Helix. What's Helix?
It's another IDE written in Rust, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a model editor in Rust.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I've been using it for the past like week or two. It's not bad. It's still in development, but it's pretty good. If trying to switch from Vim though, I'm going from VS Code. It's the same experience as going from VS Code to Vim, basically.
Oh, okay. So it probably has like a lot fewer features. You have to, I guess, get plugins to make everything work nice. I mean, I guess you'd have to do that in VS Code as well too, but like it's not as convenient, I imagine, as
It does have LSP and the debugger adapter out of the box. Although one is in beta, which is the debugger, but it has a lot of built-ins. But yeah, you should check it out and see. It's still very active, so stuff are being updated.
okay. But it doesn't have like a what do they call it? Like a plugin store?
Oh yeah, it's they want to really have most of the built-ins inside. They don't want to make it. They don't want to run code as plugins. Basically, if they want to have plugins, they want to make it declarative, kind of like maybe Nix type-ish,
Ooh,
instead of
okay.
having, stateful code.
Okay. All right, maybe I'll give this a try then. Sounds interesting. Yeah, I was using VS Code, and then and then like halfway through the game jam, I was just like, screw it. I'm so sick of this, and I just switched to plain old Vim, and everyone was like, oh my god, you're crazy. I was just like, I'm trying to get stuff done.
I'm surprised how much of an impact changing IDE makes, because I'd always used, well, not always, I used PyCharm for the last, I don't know, 3 years, I guess. And when I started doing Rust, it worked in PyCharm, so I just did Rust in PyCharm. And that was going fine because I had the student license, so it was the full feature and everything. And then I hopefully going to be finished school soon. So I'm like, okay, maybe I should try this VS Code thing everybody's been talking about. Because Vim was maybe a bit too much of a jump for me. Because I'm like, do I really want to spend all this time learning how to use Vim? So I thought, VS Code should be easy. Maybe I should have gone to Vim. In my opinion, it's been actually pretty hard to move over to Vim, because everything just worked out of the box in PyCharm. You install the Rust plugin from JetBrains themselves, and it just worked. It was, if you thought it would be there, it was generally there. And then I went to VS Code and like, okay, I installed Rust Analyzer. I thought, hey, that would be great. And then, this wasn't working, and this feature wasn't part of the ID, and this wasn't. And I was like, oh god, wow, I didn't know I used all these features. And yeah, I'm getting accustomed to it, and I've gotten a whole bunch of plugins. So a lot of stuff I was missing, I have now, but I wonder if I wouldn't have been better off going to Vim. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Vim is one of those things where you kind of have to invest a bunch of time into setting it up. And then like once you have your like Vim RC the way you like it, then you can kind of like port that around wherever you want. But like otherwise, it takes a bit more work to set up than just clicking on the install plugin button in the list and VS Code and getting Rust Analyzer there. and having like the nice search like built right in and everything is, you know, it just feels more convenient. But yeah, I mean, I've been using VS Code just with Vim key bindings, and that's sort of like my happy medium, I guess, or the sort of the middle ground. But then, you know, when VS Code just starts lagging and it's a pain to actually just type anything, period, in the editor, you know, I have to take more drastic measures. So
The nice thing about Vim though is that no matter where you go, it's almost always installed, so you don't have to ever worry if your ID is going to be around.
that
Yeah, I guess.
yeah, that's how I feel. That is something that I do feel about Vim, and I've had people argue with me about this in the past. So I don't really want to I don't really want to get too into the weeds with that.
Yeah, that's actually. No, I'm saying that's actually why I started trying out VS Code at least, because it's been pushed everywhere, right? So like GitHub now has VS Code in the thing. You just press dot and it pulls up VS Code for you. I'm like, okay, well, that's more useful if you're a customer of Vim. VS Code, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you know, back in like probably around 2017, 2018, there were I remember I think they still run the annual like Rust developer surveys, right? Like back then, I remember majority of people were using Vim at that time, and there were a lot fewer people using stuff like VS Code. It was all like Vim, Emacs, and I think maybe like some people were using like Notepad or something. I don't remember what else it was on there, or was it like Sublime? I don't know, but yeah, now when you look at those pie charts, you see it's like predominantly VS Code, and I feel like there was like some kind of shift at some point where suddenly everybody was using VS Code, and then if you told people you're using Vim, they just kind of like looked at you funny and were like, "Why are you not using VS Code like everybody else?" At least that's been my experience. I don't know. I work with a lot of people who like to use VS Code. They just kind of pick the popular option.
Yeah, well, my biggest thing is I didn't realize how much I customized VS Code until I used it in a dev container because I was away from my laptop and I saw they had this dev container option. So I was like, okay, yeah, sure, that sounds great. So I pulled it up and everything I was accustomed to wasn't there. I was like, all the way I was accustomed to interacting with Git and all the things they just weren't there. I was like, huh, I didn't realize I'd put these many plugins in because I tried not to put too many plugins so that if I go to somebody else's machine, I wouldn't have to be completely lost. But apparently, yeah, there's just so much missing that I am completely lost.
I think it's hard to work with any kind of minimalistic IDE or text editor without having like a whole bunch of plugins, because inevitably you're going to work on like a bunch of different projects with different languages, and maybe not for everybody. Maybe not everybody's job involves switching projects all the time, but at least for me, I end up installing a bunch of different plugins for a bunch of different languages, and yeah, it's pretty hard when you're working in like a massive code base to work without basic features like autocomplete and like being able to like jump to the definition of a function. All those like nice LSP functionalities. So yeah, I just feel like the plugin apocalypse is sort of inevitable.
Yeah. The feature that surprised me the most is I never noticed, especially when I'm navigating code, that I put down like bookmarks, and both PyCharm and Delphi, which are the two ones I had used the most, have this feature where you press Control Shift and number, and it puts down a bookmark, and then you press Control and number, and you just jump back to that location. Like when I'm trying to understand code or I'm looking for something in the code, I didn't realize how much I use that. I just do it by automatic, And I found a plugin that doesn't VS Code. But when I was at the office and I tried to do it, I was like, oh, wait, I can't bookmark this. I was like, okay, remember the line number. And we just come back to the line number. It was weird. It's just a simple thing, It's just something I didn't realize that I depended on because it just always worked. I don't know. It was just strange.
That seems useful. I don't know if no, there's a sort of like bookmark feature in Vim, like just in vanilla Vim, where you can just press M and then type in like any other letter as like a register to save the position to, and then if you just like type single quote that letter, I think it just brings you right back to that position in that file. I don't know if it works across files, like if you have a different tab open, but that's usually what I use for like bookmarking position. So
Yeah, it works across positions in the ones I was referring to, because across files, sorry, because you know, I will have like this one thing I'm working on, but you kind of need to build out a whole bunch of stuff around it. So you keep on jumping back to that one spot, and I don't know, it just
fair.
happens. And yeah,
That is pretty nice. Yeah.
it's just one of the things you take for granted, right? Until you don't have it, and then you're like, oh, huh, I do use that.
All right. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to discuss today, or any questions about anything? No.
No, doesn't seem so.
Well, Jonathan, since you mentioned VS Code lagging, and you were talking about the Vim and its relatives, I quickly peeked at Atom. I used to love Atom for it. It has been a light and fast editor, but no, I don't see any future of Rust for Atom. There was some, and there is still something on the Rust Lang for Atom, but no progress in last 2 years.
Well, Atom itself died, right? Well, not died, but it's basically almost dead. Microsoft killed it off, as I understand. So I don't think anybody's actively working on it anymore.
Yeah. And from what I've heard, it was also slow. Like it's also Electron based, just like VS Code. It wasn't.
Atom was slower than VS Code for sure. At least my laptop was old at the time, so maybe that's why VS Code doesn't feel as slow.
I actually used Atom for like a tiny brief period of time, and that was specifically because I was going through the type driven development book with Idris, and that book had like a bunch of like cute little keyboard shortcuts you could use with like this Idris plugin for Atom, and you could just like auto implement functions and stuff using like proof search, and that was like the one time I used Atom. It was just for my time doing that tutorial, and then after that, never again, because eventually they released Idris 2, and then Idris 2 would have a Vim plugin and an Emacs plugin, and I think it even has a VS Code plugin now. And yeah, all the keyboard shortcuts work there just fine. They don't even support Atom anymore for Idris 2, I don't think, because well, Atom is basically dead. So yeah, that was my like very brief time trying out Atom, and I mean, yeah, it was nice for like the tutorial, but yeah, it definitely felt a little bit slow.
Yeah, I'm actually curious. Have any of you tried Zed, the new editor that they're writing in Rust? No. Okay.
I've heard
It
of
seems
it.
cool. Yeah, I've heard of it, right? But I haven't tried it because it only works on Mac right now, and I don't have a Mac. So, but it's by the same people who wrote Atom.
What did you say? Zig the language, or what was it?
No, not Zig. Zed. It's ZED, I believe they spell it.
Yeah.
It's an IDE.
Here's their site.
Oh, I have a question. In terms of the referencing references, the syntax seems to be you put an asterisk in front of it, and then if you want to access element on it, then you put brackets around that and put a dot. Does anybody know of easier way to do that. So let me see if I can give an example. Let x equal 5, and then we have, oh, I see I can't press enter. What's happened? I typed some code and it's disappeared. Okay, I guess Google doesn't let me send code. But basically, if you have a pointer to, let's say, some struct, a reference to some struct, and you want to access an element on that struct, no, you can just access to the dot. That's a bad example.
Yeah.
I'll look for an example for next meeting because I'm curious and I feel it's kind of annoying, but I don't have to do it often, so it's not very annoying. But I'll look for an example. I'll bring it to next meeting.
Are you talking about something like the arrow operator from C++?
Yeah, exactly, something like that.
I don't think Rust has anything like that, and I thought in most cases you didn't have to because it would like implicitly.
It does it sometimes. Sometimes if you need to dereference it, you end up having to do it yourself. Like for example, okay, yes, an example was I was trying to access the min function method that's implemented for integers to just get the minimum of 2 values. And I had a reference to the value, I didn't have the actual value. So I had to dereference the value, then put brackets around it, then put the dot, and then put min. And I was like, this feels, it's annoying. It just seems error prone, like I'm gonna type this wrong.
I don't exactly. Well, what do you mean by like error prone though?
All these brackets. Every time I have to put a whole bunch of brackets, I always feel like I'm gonna get them in the wrong place. It wasn't that many brackets this time, but it adds up.
Oh, I guess if you have, yeah, I guess that could end up causing issues potentially.
All right, take care.
I feel like I'd need to see an actual example though. To
Well,
really
the example I have is bad. I'll look for a better example because the one I have is just a single dereference, so it's not so bad when it's just one.
Well, even for the single dereference.
I can get that example. That's not far. Oh, here it is.
I feel like I don't do that.
Actually, I can probably just share my screen. That'll probably be easier than me trying to copy and paste it since Google blocked me the last time. This one. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay, yeah, so it's right here. I am trying to get the value inside of the entry for the hash map. I'm trying to set it to the minimum of itself or the other value. And I kind of had to put these brackets around it and it was just one, so it wasn't so bad. Last time I had to do it, I had to put another bracket around it because the other thing was a reference again. I had to put another star, and it was like, I don't know, just annoying.
Oh, there's totally a way to avoid this. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure there's a way to avoid this.
Maybe I could just put the ampersand here. No, okay, I couldn't. Yeah.
God, I don't remember exactly how this works. I usually just let the compiler kind of point me in the right direction. Where is X defined?
X is defined inside of the arguments to the closure.
This is a lambda, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can probably, is it the ref keyword? I don't remember what keyword it is, but there's, or if you can, yeah, there's, no, you tried the ampersand already.
Well,
although
I didn't read your message. I don't know. What did it say?
Well, it's
If you
a,
put an ampersand there, then I think that X is a value and not, so you can't like
Right, exactly.
write to the pointer.
X is
Yeah.
mutable. Yeah, good. Yeah, that was what it was.
yeah, it's mutable.
When I saw the red thing come up, I just like, yep, I tried this before. That didn't work. Yeah, because I do need to.
Can you have ampersand mute?
Yes, it's ampersand mutable because I want to modify the entry if it exists in the hash map. Otherwise, I want to insert it.
Yeah, but when the ampersand failed, what if you define that x as ampersand mute x?
I don't know what that would even mean. cannot mutate variable x?
Because it's trying to borrow it twice, probably for the right side and for the left side.
I think it's just because x is now no longer a pointer, so you can't. You
Right.
just have an actual I32.
Yeah,
so
it's
you
just
can't
an
assign
immutable
to it.
reference.
Yeah.
But that's still interesting to be aware of. But if I just needed to read it, usually the reference in this style is usually enough for me. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I already kind of worked around with the brackets. It's just feels annoying. And every time I do it, I feel to myself, I wonder if there's a RFC for this. If I should look it up and probably put a +1 on it, but I've never actually taken the time to look for the RFC.
Does
You
the
could
ref
write some ugly macro.
A macro would not be a solution to this problem, I suspect, because that would make it. Oh, you mean like to take the No, but macro it would have to be valid Rust code before, right?
Yeah, it would just move the ugliness somewhere else, and you would have a different ugliness again.
Well, where would you put the macro? Because if I put it on the function, that doesn't fix the problem because this would still need to be valid code inside of here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've never written any macros yet. I don't think they allow you to bypass valid syntax. I don't know. Because I know you can write other languages inside of Rust using macros. So I guess maybe there's a way. I've just never tried, as well as I have a problem with macros in that Rust format doesn't work. So when I move this here, it doesn't automatically just move it back for me. But if I do this, it'll automatically fix it for me. And I don't like formatting code. So I don't abuse macros as a result. I like the idea of macros, but I like Rust format more. And I should put this back before I forget. No, I'm probably not going to forget. It's red.
Hmm.
Oh, I got rid of X. But there's also some bug I have in here. It's actually interesting how long this is compared to the Python version. It reads better, or modify anything, because they use the default dictionary in Python to do this. So it comes out really quite neat. It's really nice, elegant solution in Python. But I feel like it requires you to be very familiar with the default dict class. Otherwise, it's not always obvious what's happening. The Rust one kind of spells out everything in much more detail. And modify or insert. I don't know. I feel like it reads better.
Well, I believe what you can do is .min returns the minimum of its left side and its parameter preval and star x. So you could switch them. You could have prev_val dot min and then just star x, and that way you have only one pair of parents.
Yeah.
See you, everyone. Take care.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now, and I think we can probably wrap up the meeting. Because
Yeah.
I'm not sure, unless there's somebody else people want to say, because I think most people have already left.
Yeah, that's fine. I was gonna wrap things up anyway. If no one else had anything to talk about. It's about time anyway. It's already past 7. So yeah. Thanks everyone for coming, and yeah, I'll, if anyone wants to do a talk for our next meetup, feel free. Let either me or Chester know. Otherwise, yeah, we're just gonna call it here, and hopefully see you all next month.
All right, everybody. Have a good night. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.